last time anybody saw her. For years, everyone from the FBI to local police departments have been trying to figure out what happened to Morgan, but that all changed last year after a big break.
The first time that I'm aware of in this case, I'm calling Billy Jack Links a suspect in Morgan's abduction.
Investigators, though, linked him to the case after finding a hair in his truck. New DNA testing revealed that hair belonged to either her mother, Colleen, or a member of Colleen's family. Police say that nobody in the Nick family was familiar with Links.
Climbed down from the bleachers to go with her friends. She threw her arms around my neck and gave me a big hug, and she kissed me on the cheek.
And that was the last time Colleen felt the touch of her little girl.
In an instant, terror invaded our lives, and 20 years later, we are still living with it.
Nearly 3 decades have passed, and the case of 6-year-old Morgan Nick, who vanished without a trace while catching fireflies at an Arkansas baseball field, seemed destined to remain in the shadows forever. A predator snatched away a little angel, leaving a resilient mother to endure 29 grueling years of heartache. But now, the miracle of science has spoken. A stunning breakthrough, powered by state-of-the-art DNA technology, has unraveled this historic mystery. Police have officially identified the fateful red pickup truck and the name of the suspect. Below is the full picture of the case, where the light of justice is finally beginning to break through. For nearly 3 decades, the disappearance of Morgan Nick stood as one of the most haunting and elusive mysteries in American true crime. Generations of investigators had chased down thousands of leads, dug up empty fields, and followed phantom trails that led to heartbreaking dead ends. However, the narrative abruptly shifted in 2024. Focusing on a monumental forensic discovery, law enforcement finally shattered the 29-year silence, officially identifying the prime suspect and uncovering the most critical piece of evidence since the night the little girl vanished. The turning point actually began in the shadows of 2020, when investigators achieved what many thought was impossible. They located the infamous red pickup truck that had haunted the nightmares of Morgan's family. It was a 1986 red Chevrolet Scottsdale, a vehicle that once belonged to a former person of interest who had long since faded from the headlines. Recognizing the gravity of the find, the Alma Police Department brought in an FBI evidence response team to meticulously process the aging vehicle. Operating with surgical precision, forensic experts vacuumed the interior of the decades-old truck, sifting through layers of dirt and time. What they discovered was chilling. Hidden deep within the fabric and crevices of the vehicle were microscopic green fibers, an exact visual match to the bright green Girl Scout shirt Morgan had been wearing the night she was taken. Even more disturbing, investigators recovered traces of blood and several delicate strands of blonde hair. However, the investigation quickly hit a devastating roadblock. The blonde hairs lacked a root, making them virtually useless for standard forensic DNA testing. For a time, the evidence sat in limbo, possessing the secrets of Morgan's fate, but remaining locked away due to the limitations of science. Refusing to let the trail go cold again, the Arkansas State Police funded a last hope effort, sending these incredibly fragile, degraded samples to Uthram Inc., a cutting-edge laboratory in Texas renowned for solving the unsolvable through advanced forensic genetic genealogy. What followed was nothing short of a scientific miracle. By September 2024, Uthram's scientists successfully extracted a viable DNA profile from the rootless hair shafts. They compared this highly complex genetic data directly to a DNA sample provided by Colleen Nick, Morgan's mother. The results were staggering and undeniable. It was a 100% familial match. After 29 agonizing years, science had provided absolute, irrefutable confirmation that 6-year-old Morgan Nick had been inside that red truck. With the forensic puzzle finally pieced together, law enforcement moved swiftly to rewrite history. On October 1, 2024, the Alma Police Department held an emotional and deeply impactful press conference, officially declaring Billy Jack Links as the first and only prime suspect in the abduction of Morgan Nick. The revelation carried a bitter sting of irony and heartbreak for the community. Links was not a mysterious, untraceable drifter. He was a local man who had actually been questioned by investigators mere months after Morgan's disappearance in 1995, only to be released due to a lack of concrete physical evidence at the time. He would later be incarcerated for another disturbing crime involving a child, ultimately dying behind bars in the year 2000. While Links can no longer face a jury or answer for his horrific actions in a court of law, this historic breakthrough has finally pierced the darkness of this decades-old cold case, giving a resilient mother the first definitive answers she has had in almost 30 years. While the groundbreaking DNA extraction undeniably placed Morgan Nick inside the red Chevrolet Scottsdale, the official identification of Billy Jack Links did not neatly tie up every loose end in this tragic saga. Instead, it birthed a perplexing new mystery, opening the door to the most fiercely debated and controversial detail of the modern investigation. The evidence unequivocally points to Links's truck, but the physical reality of the man himself directly contradicts the most crucial eyewitness testimonies recorded on the night of June 9, 1995. This glaring loophole centers entirely on a massive, undeniable age discrepancy. The two children who had been catching fireflies with Morgan that night, Jessica and Ty, provided a very specific description of the creepy man leaning against the red camper truck. They described a robust, dark-haired man with a hairy chest, estimating him to be somewhere in his mid-20s to early 30s. The bombshell revelation: Billy Jack Links was 70 years old at the time of the abduction. It is highly improbable that two children, even in the fading evening light, would mistake a 70-year-old senior citizen for a man in his prime.
He denied any knowledge of Morgan's abduction, and at that time appeared to be truthful. Investigators at that time moved on.
He didn't serve his whole time in prison because he died in 2000. Police say he became a person of interest in 2021 after investigators tracked down the red truck and searched it for evidence and found hair samples.
Was that of Colleen Nick, one of her siblings, or one of her children?
And to now, they're investigating him as a suspect, the only suspect they've named in more than 29 years.
This startling contradiction immediately sparked intense public speculation. If Billy Jack Links was the mastermind behind the wheel, who was the young man standing outside the truck? This unanswered question has led online true crime communities, particularly on platforms like Reddit, to dive deep into a chilling hypothesis. Links did not act alone. The internet's collective suspicion quickly zeroed in on the most logical accomplice, his own flesh and blood. At the time of Morgan's disappearance, Billy Jack Links had a son named Andy Lee Links, who happened to be exactly 26 years old. This aligns flawlessly with the age range provided by the child witnesses and matches the eerie composite sketch that was circulated nationwide for decades. Adding a deeply disturbing layer of credibility to this theory is the younger Links's own violent history. In 2011, Andy Lee Links forcibly broke into a woman's home, demanded money, and committed a heinous offense against her, a crime for which he was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Could a depraved father-son dynamic be at the dark heart of Morgan's kidnapping? While law enforcement has not officially named Andy as a suspect, the pieces of this dark puzzle fit together with terrifying precision. Perhaps the most horrifying aspect of this entire ordeal is the sheer, unbridled audacity of the devil himself. Billy Jack Links was not a phantom who vanished into the shadows after committing the ultimate crime. He was a brazen predator operating in plain sight. A mere 2 months after Morgan Nick disappeared, while a massive, nationwide manhunt was frantically searching for her, the 70-year-old struck again. In August 1995, using that exact same red pickup truck, Links attempted to abduct an 11-year-old girl in Van Buren, Arkansas, an area located just 8 miles from the Alma baseball field. Fortunately, the brave young girl managed to escape, and a vigilant witness noted the truck's license plate, leading directly to Links's arrest. This chilling brazenness proves that Links felt completely untouchable, boldly hunting for his next victim in the very epicenter of the search for Morgan Nick. To truly grasp the magnitude of this tragedy, we must rewind the clock to a hot, humid Friday evening in Alma, Arkansas. On June 9, 1995, the local Little League baseball field was buzzing with the sounds of cheering families, cracking bats, and innocent summer fun. 6-year-old Morgan Nick attended the game with her mother, Colleen. Morgan was dressed brightly for the occasion, wearing a vibrant green Girl Scout t-shirt, blue denim shorts, and white tennis shoes. She was a sweet, somewhat shy child who loved cats, believed bubblegum was a food group, and spent the first part of the game playfully untying her mother's shoelaces. But as the game stretched into the night, the young girl grew restless. At approximately 10:30 p.m., Morgan asked her mother for permission to join two older children she knew, 8-year-old Jessica and 10-year-old Ty, who were heading toward the parking lot and a nearby hill to catch fireflies. Though initially hesitant because she was unfamiliar with the Alma ballpark, Colleen relented after other parents assured her the area was perfectly safe. Morgan threw her arms around her mother's neck, planted a kiss on her cheek, and ran off laughing. That sweet, fleeting embrace would be the last time Colleen ever saw her daughter. A mere 15 minutes later, at 10:45 p.m., the game officially ended. Colleen turned her attention toward the parking lot, expecting to see her little girl running back to go home. Instead, she only saw Jessica and Ty walking toward the bleachers. The 15-minute window had closed, and Morgan had vanished into the dark night air. Panic immediately set in as Colleen rushed to question the two children. Their innocent recounting of those missing minutes would form the terrifying foundation of a decades-long manhunt. Jessica and Ty explained that after playing in the dirt, the trio had stopped next to Colleen's Nissan to empty the sand from their shoes. The older kids leaned against the front hood, while Morgan stood near the rear bumper. When Jessica and Ty walked away to head back to the field, they simply assumed Morgan was waiting by the car for her mother.
Daughter never ran off. She's very shy. And she's very quiet. She wouldn't go off by herself in the dark. Morgan, wherever you are, honey, remember we love you. We're looking for you, darling. Whoever has her, please don't hurt her. Bring her back. We want her home.
However, the children revealed a chilling detail: they had not been alone in the dark. Standing just yards away was a suspicious stranger leaning against a faded red pickup truck. The vehicle featured a mismatched white camper shell that was bizarrely about 4 inches too short for the truck bed. The man was described as being in his mid-20s, with slick-back salt and pepper hair, a mustache, and a short beard. He was standing shirtless, exposing a hairy chest, and wore only cut-off denim jeans. The children recalled that he had been watching them intently like a predator stalking its prey, even attempting to strike up a conversation with a distinct, hillbilly accent to lull them into a false sense of security. In the blink of an eye, both the man and the red truck disappeared, taking Morgan Nick with them. As we prepare to dive into the agonizing dead ends and the massive nationwide search that followed, I want to pause for just a moment. If you believe in keeping these victims' names alive and want to support deep dive investigations into unsolved mysteries, please take a second to hit that subscribe button. Your support builds our community and ensures that stories like Morgan's are never forgotten in the shadows. In the desperate hunt for Morgan Nick, law enforcement and her family were repeatedly subjected to the ultimate emotional whiplash. For every promising lead that surfaced, there was a heartbreaking dead end that not only squandered precious time and thousands of dollars in investigative resources, but also inflicted unimaginable psychological torment on a grieving mother.
We want people to remember that Morgan is still missing. We don't want the passage of time to cause people to forget about her case, to forget that she hasn't been found.
One of the most agonizing and cruel fabrications occurred just weeks after Morgan vanished. A man named Albert Harvey from Stuttgart, Arkansas, nearly 200 miles away from Alma, contacted the police with a heart-stopping claim. He reported seeing a man matching the suspect's description attempting to break into his truck. When spotted, the man allegedly fled across a field, forcibly dragging a little blonde girl by the arm. Believing the nightmare was finally over, Morgan's desperate parents immediately chartered a private plane to Stuttgart, fully expecting to gather their rescued daughter in their arms and bring her home. A massive multi-agency operation was launched. National Guard helicopters tracking dogs, and hundreds of volunteers spent 16 grueling hours hacking through sweltering, mosquito-infested swamps, rice fields, and thick bayous. The devastating reality: After failing 2 polygraph tests, Harvey callously broke down and confessed that he had entirely fabricated the story of the little blonde girl. The massive search was a costly illusion, and Harvey was arrested for filing a false police report. If the Stuttgart hoax was a cruel trick, another lead proved to be a deeply disturbing psychological nightmare. The local community was thrown into a frenzy when a 36-year-old deaf man from Crawford County provided a videotaped statement confessing to the unthinkable. He claimed he had abducted Morgan from the Little League field, brutally assaulted her, and later burned his blood-soaked clothing. Treating it as a major breakthrough, investigators raided his home and vehicle, seizing 22 items of compelling physical evidence. Among the collected items were a pink toothbrush, a knife, a wood chisel, and most alarmingly, a single, long blonde hair.
I thought when the police got there, I thought that they would know what to do, that they would figure this out, that we would have Morgan back right away. It never crossed my mind that we would be here even a day later. It was never a thought in my head that Morgan would still be missing for 25 years, that 25 years later, we would still be sitting here.
For months, Morgan's family and the town held their breath waiting for the FBI crime lab results. In a crushing blow, the forensic DNA analysis proved it was a false confession. None of the evidence matched Morgan, the man was allowed to walk free, and the investigation was dragged back to square one. As years bled into decades, the relentless pursuit of the truth led to increasingly desperate excavations. Acting on confidential informant tips regarding a convicted child predator, the hunt crossed state lines into Spiro, Oklahoma. In 2010 and again in December 2017, federal agents and local police descended upon a vacant property. When cadaver dogs reportedly alerted to a specific area on the land, investigators brought in forensic pathologists to painstakingly dig out what they believed was an old, buried well. They scraped away the earth inch by inch until their shovels violently struck solid bedrock. Once again, the earth yielded nothing but dirt, no well, no hidden evidence, and no Morgan Nick. As with any high-profile cold case that stretches across decades, the excruciating vacuum of official answers often becomes a fertile breeding ground for rampant speculation, internet rumors, and dark conspiracy theories. The disappearance of Morgan Nick was certainly no exception. Statistically, law enforcement is acutely aware that the vast majority of child abductions are perpetrated by someone close to the victim, typically a family member, an estranged parent, or a trusted family friend. Naturally, Morgan's parents, Colleen and John Nick, were the very first individuals placed under the intense microscope of the initial police investigation. However, both were rapidly and definitively cleared of any involvement. The couple had finalized a highly amicable divorce just 6 months prior to the abduction. There were no bitter custody battles, financial disputes, or underlying animosities that would remotely suggest foul play originating from within their own home. Despite law enforcement officially clearing the family, relentless internet sleuths and armchair detectives eventually unearthed public court records that birthed a persistent and chilling alternative narrative. This highly controversial theory pointed a suspicious finger at Morgan's father, Morris John Nick, who had a documented criminal history involving illicit substance charges. Online crime forums began weaving a dark, complex web connecting John to a man named Clifford Joe Pullen. Pullen was a known local contraband trafficker who, horrifyingly, was convicted of indecency with a minor just 1 month after Morgan vanished from the baseball field. According to this speculative narrative, Pullen allegedly operated as an underground supplier who had previously possessed unfettered access to the Nick residence. Theorists speculated that Morgan might have been inadvertently exposed to a highly dangerous criminal underworld, suggesting that a predatory associate of her father had orchestrated a targeted kidnapping to satisfy his depraved urges or perhaps to settle a lingering illicit debt. While this theory paints a terrifying, cinematic picture of a compromised family dragged into the abyss of a local crime ring, the hard, verifiable facts completely dismantle it. The most glaring and insurmountable flaw in the web sleuth's hypothesis was the physical reality of the suspected predator. Clifford Joe Pullen was born in 1928, making him a 67-year-old senior citizen in the summer of 1995. This aggressively contradicted the clear eyewitness testimonies of the two children at the Alma baseball field, who distinctly described the abductor as a robust, hairy-chested man in his mid-20s to early 30s wearing cut-off jeans. The physical puzzle pieces simply did not fit together. Furthermore, extensive police work never yielded a single shred of credible evidence linking Pullen, or any of John Nick's alleged associates, to the tragic events at the Little League Park. Ultimately, the painful truth of what happened that night was both simpler and infinitely more terrifying. Morgan Nick was not the victim of an elaborate, targeted family conspiracy or a shadowy underworld retribution plot. She was the tragic victim of a crime of pure opportunity, snatched in the blink of an eye by a brazen stranger, Billy Jack Lynx. He was simply a predator lurking in the shadows of a rural parking lot on a warm summer night, waiting for the perfect moment to steal an innocent life. In the bleak and devastating aftermath of a child's abduction, it is paralyzingly easy for a family to be entirely consumed by grief, trauma, and despair. Yet, in the face of an unimaginable nightmare, Colleen Nick refused to let the darkness win. Instead of breaking under the crushing weight of her agonizing loss, she channeled her profound heartbreak into a relentless, decades-long crusade. Her extraordinary resilience not only kept her daughter's memory fiercely alive, but fundamentally transformed how the entire state of Arkansas responds to missing persons cases. Just 1 year after that fateful night at the baseball field, Colleen turned her paralyzing pain into powerful action by establishing the Morgan Nick Foundation in 1996. What began as a desperate mother's plea to find her own child rapidly evolved into a monumental lifeline for countless other families facing the exact same terror. The foundation was built on 3 vital pillars: intervention, education, and legislation. Recognizing the chaotic communication gap that often occurs in the crucial early hours of a disappearance, Colleen designed the organization to act as an essential, empathetic bridge between panicked families and law enforcement agencies. Furthermore, the foundation proactively travels to schools from kindergartens to college campuses, educating tens of thousands of students annually on abduction prevention, internet safety, and situational awareness. The sheer scale of Colleen's impact is staggering. In the year 2020 alone, the Morgan Nick Foundation actively assisted in managing and supporting over 500 missing children and adult cases across the state.
Steve Strickland is the foundation's assistant director.
I think the work that we do with families, offering them support and oftentimes just being that listening ear for them, I think that weighs so much bigger than people realize. To be able to have your voice heard and to be able to have someone that can understand the journey that you're walking and that can help you navigate that.
Colleen's tireless advocacy did not stop at community support. It reached the highest levels of state legislation. Because of her unwavering determination to ensure no other parent would ever have to endure the agonizing delays she faced in 1995, Arkansas became one of the earliest states in the nation to implement a rapid emergency broadcast system for abducted children. To honor her daughter's enduring legacy, the state's AMBR alert system was officially established and named the Morgan Nick Alert. Every time those urgent, blaring alarms notify the public of a child in danger, it is the direct, life-saving result of a mother's fierce love. Perhaps the most awe-inspiring aspect of Colleen Nick's journey is her unbreakable, defiant hope. The realm of missing children is often shadowed by grim, unforgiving statistics. Experts routinely note the heartbreaking reality that a mere 2% of children who are abducted by complete strangers and remain missing for extended periods ever make it home alive. However, Colleen flatly refuses to allow Morgan to be reduced to a tragic mathematical probability. Drawing strength from the miraculous recoveries of other long-term missing children, Colleen's stance remains resolutely unshaken. Her unwavering declaration has become a rallying cry for families of the missing everywhere. Until someone can prove to me that Morgan did not survive, I am going to fight every single day to bring her home. while the breathtaking DNA revelation in 2024 provided the most significant breakthrough in 29 years by officially naming Billy Jack Lynx as the prime suspect, it did not mark the end of the Morgan Nick investigation. Alma Police Chief Jeff Pointer has made it unequivocally clear to the public and the media that this case is far from closed. Finding the truck and identifying the abductor were monumental victories for modern forensic science, but they only solved the first half of this tragic puzzle. The most agonizing questions still haunt investigators and Morgan's family alike. What truly happened to the 6-year-old girl after the doors of that red Chevrolet Scottsdale slammed shut on June 9, 1995? Where did Lynx take her that night? And, most importantly, where is she or her remains located today? The intense focus of the investigation has now shifted entirely from finding the who to uncovering the where and the how. To piece together the missing chapters of this terrifying timeline, law enforcement is turning once again to the public. The FBI, in close coordination with the Alma Police Department and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, has launched an urgent, nationwide appeal. They are asking anyone who crossed paths with Billy Jack Lynx in the 1990s to step out of the shadows and come forward. Furthermore, given the lingering timeline discrepancies and the chilling theories surrounding potential accomplices, authorities are deeply interested in the Lynx family dynamic. Investigators are urging anyone with memories, whispers, or long-held secrets about the Lynx family's activities, properties, or movements during the summer of 1995 to call the dedicated tip line at 1-800-KAL-FBI. No detail is considered too small or insignificant. Someone, somewhere, holds the final missing piece of this tragic puzzle, and authorities are hoping the heavy weight of a 29-year-old's secret will finally push them to speak the truth. At the very center of this sprawling, decades-long criminal investigation remains the pure, unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. Through every cruel false lead, every devastating excavation, and every passing year, Colleen Nick's love has been the fierce guiding force, keeping Morgan's name in the light. In a deeply moving televised address following the identification of her daughter's abductor, Colleen looked directly into the camera lens to deliver a message to the little girl who vanished into the dark so many years ago. It was a plea filled with unimaginable grace, resilience, and an unwavering promise. "Morgan," she said, her voice steady with the profound strength of a mother who has fought for nearly 3 decades. "It is okay if you have forgotten about us, or if you are not sure who you are. But we have never forgotten about you. We are still fighting for you. We have an army of people fighting for you, and we are coming to get you." That powerful promise continues to echo across Arkansas and the entire nation. The search for Morgan Nick is no longer just a cold case. It is a profound testament to the fact that no child is ever truly lost as long as someone is still looking for them. The light of justice has finally pierced the darkness, and the army Colleen built will not rest until Morgan is brought home.